there's a moment in your journey where something clicks. You stop reacting, you stop explaining, you stop chasing, not because you gave up, but because you leveled up. And when that happens, people feel it. The energy around you changes. You don't bend for approval. You don't flinch when challenged. You become untouchable, not physically, but spiritually. This isn't about being better than anyone else. It's about breaking free. Free from fear, free from manipulation, free from the noise. And if you've felt the shift, if the word feels different lately, if you feel different, then you're going to want to hear this till the end. Because I'm about to share the 11 unmistakable spiritual signs that you are becoming truly untouchable. The first sign is subtle but powerful. When things happen, good or bad, you don't explode or shut down. You breathe. You observe. You choose your response. That's the start of mastery. You begin to value stillness. Conversations that once drained you no longer attract you. You seek depth, not distraction. You no longer try to prove your worth. You're at peace with being misunderstood because your energy speaks louder than words ever could. What used to anger, offend, or shake you now passes through you like the wind. Not because you don't care, but because you've healed. You start saying no without fear. Your peace becomes your priority, and people who thrive on chaos can't touch you anymore. You walk into a room and feel everything. You read people without words. It's not paranoia, it's spiritual intelligence. You no longer fear being alone. In fact, it's where you regenerate. You've found your own company to be the most energizing of all. You don't hold grudges, but you've learned. Forgiveness sets you free, but boundaries keep you free. The world moves fast, but your soul is patient. You've stopped rushing because you trust in divine timing. You don't need dramatic exits. You don't chase apologies. When something no longer aligns, you walk away gracefully and permanently. People tell you they feel calm around you, inspired, seen. You're not performing, you're just being. That's the highest frequency. There's a common misconception in the modern world that power must be loud, that it must announce itself, dominate rooms, demand attention, or crush opposition. We're taught that to be powerful, you must speak the most, move the fastest, or command the stage. But that's not real power. That's performance. And performance fades. True power is silent. It moves differently. It doesn't need applause, permission, or the spotlight. It exists deeply within someone, like a quiet flame that never flickers. No matter how strong the wind blows. When you begin to awaken spiritually, you start to understand this. You feel it in yourself before the world can even recognize it. You become less interested in proving your worth and more focused on protecting your peace. And the more you do, the more untouchable you become. Not in a prideful way, but in a rooted, unshakable one. It begins with a shift in how you respond to life. Where once you may have reacted with noise, anger, defensiveness, worry, now you pause, you breathe, you observe, you choose. That moment of choosing, that space between action and reaction, is where your true strength resides. And that strength speaks volumes without saying a word. There's a kind of presence some people carry without ever raising their voice. You feel it when they enter a room. It's in their calmness, their steady gaze, the way they don't chase attention, but still draw it. That's not coincidence. That's someone who has found power, not outside, but within. This power comes from stillness, from clarity, from detachment. Not the cold kind of detachment that rejects the world, but the wise kind that refuses to be consumed by it. When you are no longer reacting to every opinion, every insult, every fluctuation of life, you're not becoming passive, you're becoming untouchable. Because here's the truth, the more you need to prove your power, the less of it you actually have. When you're loud with your strength, it usually means you're still trying to convince yourself of it. But when it becomes silent, steady, natural, you've stepped into something deeper. It's in the way you hold your energy. You don't throw it around. You don't try to force others to feel you. You just are. You're no longer trying to be seen, you've seen yourself. And once you've done that, the opinions of others begin to matter less and less. Their praise doesn't inflate you, and their criticism doesn't shake you. This kind of spiritual power isn't aggressive. It's not about dominating anyone else. It's about not needing to. It's the power that makes you walk away from arguments that don't serve your soul. It's the power that lets you say no without needing to explain. It's the power that chooses peace over performance, presence over perception. And that's why it's untouchable. Because it's not based on anything the world can give you or take from you. It's not rooted in titles, wealth, popularity, or status. All those things are temporary. But what's built within, the calm mind, the open heart, the unshakable spirit, that lasts. You start to notice that the people who truly carry power are rarely the ones shouting about it. They don't need to win debates or crush opponents. They let their energy do the talking. They trust that life will reveal the truth in time. They've seen enough, lived enough, felt enough to know that the loudest person in the room is often the most insecure. And ironically, this silence becomes magnetic. People start coming to you, not for your opinions, but for your presence. They feel safe around you. They don't know why, but something in your calmness speaks louder than their inner noise. You've stopped trying to change the world, and by doing so, you've started to influence it effortlessly. This is not weakness. This is refinement. This is wisdom. It's understanding that a river cuts through rock not by force, but by persistence. It's the quiet strength of the tree that stands tall through storms, not by resisting the wind, but by bending with it. So if you've started feeling less reactive, more silent, more still, if you're no longer trying to prove yourself, but just live from your truth, if you're protecting your peace like it's sacred, it's because it is. You're not becoming invisible, you're becoming powerful. You're not becoming passive, you're becoming precise. And that's what it means to become untouchable. True power isn't about being seen. It's about being felt, silently, deeply, unshakably, within. There comes a point in your spiritual evolution where your energy begins to speak louder than your voice ever could. It becomes a living force, a quiet yet powerful shield that protects you, not because you're building walls, but because you're raising your vibration. When this shift happens, people notice, even if they don't understand it. You might walk into a room and suddenly certain individuals become uncomfortable, distant, or even intimidated, not because of anything you did, but because your energy no longer matches theirs. You don't need to defend yourself, argue, or explain. You don't need to fight for peace anymore. Your very presence has become your protection. Energy doesn't lie. People can fake smiles, kind words, and even affection, but what can't be faked is frequency. The moment your inner world becomes aligned, your energy field begins to filter out what isn't. What used to hurt you no longer touches you. What once triggered you doesn't reach you anymore. You're not immune to life's ups and downs, but you're not easily moved by them either. You're grounded, centered, and that groundedness becomes your armor. In the past, you may have over-explained yourself, tried to make people see your heart, or gone out of your way to make others feel comfortable, even at the expense of your own well-being. But now, something has shifted. You've stopped shrinking. You've stopped leaking energy to those who only take. You've stopped trying to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. And what's left is a quiet, powerful form of self-respect that radiates through your aura like light through crystal. This energy is not aggressive. It doesn't need to be. It doesn't chase, it doesn't beg, it doesn't plead to be accepted. Instead, it simply is steady, clean, pure. And in that steadiness, people either rise to meet you or they drift away. You no longer have to remove people from your life. Your frequency does that for you. You start to realize that some people are drawn to your light, but not all of them can handle its heat. That's okay. Your energy isn't meant for everyone. You're not meant to be digestible to every soul you encounter. When you become spiritually strong, your presence challenges others to rise, to evolve, to confront their shadows. And not everyone is ready for that. So they fall away, not out of hate or conflict, but simply because your energy is moving in a direction theirs cannot follow. And you stop taking it personally. You start to understand that energy speaks louder than words. You begin to listen less to what people say and more to how you feel when you're around them. That feeling, that intuition is your compass. It tells you everything you need to know. The more you trust it, the stronger your energy becomes. It's like a filter through which only truth can pass. And in that truth, you stand protected. Suddenly, gossip doesn't stick to you, drama doesn't involve you, manipulation doesn't touch you. You become a mirror to others. They either reflect back your peace or they get uncomfortable and retreat. Either way, you remain centered. There's the beauty of energetic protection. It doesn't block love, connection, or growth. It only blocks distortion. When your energy is aligned, it becomes magnetic. You don't have to chase anything anymore. Opportunities, relationships, peace. All of it begins to find you because your frequency has become a signal. Not for what you want, but for what you are. You attract what reflects your wholeness. And what doesn't match simply fades. This doesn't mean you stop feeling pain or experiencing challenges. It just means you're no longer overwhelmed by them. Your energy acts like a shield, not because you've hardened, but because you've elevated. The battles you used to fight outside now resolve within. The things that used to pull you down now roll off your field like water off glass. And this is the quiet power that makes you untouchable. Not invincible, not superior, but sovereign. Your energy becomes a silent declaration. I know who I am, I know what I carry. I know what I will and will not allow. Without needing to raise your voice, your energy says, I am not available for chaos. Without needing to draw lines, your energy creates boundaries. And without needing to seek revenge, your energy naturally brings justice by removing what doesn't serve your peace. That's what happens when your energy becomes your shield. You stop needing to fight. You stop needing to prove. You simply exist in a state so aligned, so authentic, that anything untrue can no longer reach you. That's not just protection, that's spiritual evolution. And that's what makes you truly untouchable. There is a turning point in your spiritual journey where you begin to see the world differently. Not because the world itself changes, but because you do. What once triggered you no longer does. The things that used to make you angry, anxious, offended, or insecure seem to roll off your shoulders like water. It's not that you've become indifferent, it's that you've grown beyond the need to react. You've started to master your emotions instead of being mastered by them. And in doing so, you've taken a powerful step toward becoming truly untouchable. Emotional triggers used to control your inner world. A single comment from someone could ruin your whole day. A look, a tone, a post on social media could pull you into a spiral of overthinking. You were constantly in reaction mode because your inner world was unsettled. It's not that people had power over you, it's that your wounds were still open, and open wounds react. They defend, they lash out, they take things personally. But healing changes that. Inner work transforms your relationship with the outside world, and suddenly things don't penetrate you the way they used to. You begin to realize that most of the world's noise has nothing to do with you. People's opinions, projections, and behaviors are often just reflections of their own internal battles. When someone lashes out, it's their pain speaking. When someone tries to bring you down, it's often because they don't know how to lift themselves up. And instead of being offended by this, you feel compassion. Not the kind of compassion that invites disrespect, but the kind that recognizes suffering and chooses peace over conflict. This shift in perspective is not passive, it's powerful. You don't become numb, you become discerning. You stop giving your energy away to things that don't deserve it. You stop arguing with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop explaining yourself to those who aren't listening, because now you know that peace is more valuable than being right. You understand that silence can be louder than any rebuttal, and you no longer need to control the narrative, because you've made peace with your truth. One of the clearest signs that you're becoming spiritually untouchable is this calm neutrality in the face of chaos. Not because you don't care, but because you refuse to be consumed. Your nervous system is no longer hijacked by every disturbance. Your energy is no longer pulled into every fire. You've learned that not every fight deserves your presence. Not every emotion deserves your attention. And not every situation needs your reaction. This is maturity. This is alignment. This is freedom. It doesn't mean you don't feel things. You still feel deeply, but you've developed the ability to hold space for your feelings without letting them dictate your actions. You observe them, you sit with them, you move through them, and in that process you regain control over your life. You are no longer pushed and pulled by the external world. You become the still point in the storm. Others may be caught in their emotional waves, but you're learning how to stand firm. Eventually, the things that used to trigger you begin to reveal their lessons instead. Where you once felt anger, now you feel understanding. Where you once felt jealousy, now you feel inspiration. Where you once felt hurt, now you feel insight. Life stops happening to you and begins happening for you. Every trigger becomes a mirror. Every difficult interaction becomes a teacher. You're no longer afraid of being uncomfortable because you know discomfort is often where growth begins. As your triggers dissolve, so does your attachment to control. You stop trying to fix people. You stop trying to change them. You stop needing everything to go your way in order to feel okay. You let go, and in that letting go, you gain everything. You gain peace, clarity, and the ability to respond rather than react. You become lighter, clearer, and harder to disturb. The world may still be noisy, but your inner world becomes quiet. And in that quiet, you find your true power. This is what it means to be untouchable. Not in the sense that nothing ever affects you, but in the sense that nothing owns you anymore. Not fear, not judgment, not ego, not chaos. You found something deeper, something anchored, and no matter what the world throws at you, you return to it. Over and over, steady, strong, silent. And when you live from that place, the world loses its grip on you. The triggers fade, the battles end, and you rise not above others, but above your former self. That's not just growth, that's liberation. That's untouchable. There's something quietly powerful that begins to happen as you deepen your spiritual growth. The things that used to trigger you start to lose their grip. The sharp edges of life that once cut you emotionally begin to soften. It's not that challenges disappear, it's that your relationship to them changes. You no longer give your power away so easily. You're not pulled into the same reactions. The emotional hooks are still there in the world, but they don't stick to you anymore. You've started to outgrow your triggers. And that's one of the clearest signs you're becoming untouchable. In the past, it might have taken only one comment, one glance, or one rejection to set off a storm inside you. You might have replayed conversations for days, built entire narratives from someone else's behavior, or let a stranger's judgment shift your entire mood. That was your nervous system, responding from old wounds, from unresolved pain, from a deep need to feel safe, seen, or validated. But the more you heal, the more those triggers start to dissolve. They don't vanish overnight. But they lose their power slowly and then all at once. You begin to notice your reactions before they own you. You catch yourself in the moment. You breathe instead of snapping back. You reflect instead of defending yourself. You choose silence instead of proving a point. And this doesn't come from weakness, it comes from deep strength. Because it takes far more strength to remain calm than to explode. It takes more clarity to pause than to react. And it takes more self-awareness to hold space for a trigger than to unleash it on others. The truth is, triggers are unhealed invitations. They point to something within you that wants attention, not judgment. When someone or something triggers you, it isn't just about them. It's about the story you've carried inside for years. Maybe it's the belief that you're not enough, or the fear that you'll be abandoned, or the unresolved anger of not being heard. When you begin to face these stories, instead of running from them, you stop bleeding every time they touch. You stop needing others to behave a certain way just so you can feel okay. That's the moment you take your power back. When you no longer expect the world to tiptoe around your pain, you start to stand on solid ground. You realize that your peace is your responsibility, not someone else's job to protect or preserve. You stop waiting for apologies you may never get. You stop needing people to change for you to heal. And in that quiet shift, your emotional triggers start to lose their command over your energy. You might still feel the sting, but it won't last. You'll still feel hurt, but it won't define your response. You'll still feel emotion, but you won't be consumed by it. The space between stimulus and response grows wider, and in that space you find wisdom. You find power. You find the version of you who chooses presence over reaction, peace over chaos, and awareness over ego. What's beautiful is that this inner shift begins to change the outer world. People notice the difference, not always consciously, but they feel it. The ones who used to trigger you might still try, but now their energy can't find a foothold. It bounces off. It returns to them. Your neutrality becomes your protection. You don't have to block, argue, or distance yourself aggressively. Your healed energy does the work for you. And it's not about being unbothered in a fake or performative way. It's not about pretending that nothing affects you. That's suppression, not strength. This is different. This is honest, grounded resilience. You feel everything, but you choose what deserves your time, your breath, your focus. You don't numb your emotions, you mature through them. that maturity becomes your armor. Not cold, not hard, just calm, just clear. As more triggers fade, you become lighter. Life flows more easily. Conversations feel less like landmines. Relationships feel safer, not because people are perfect, but because you no longer demand perfection. You allow space, you hold grace, and you offer the same to yourself. The compassion you found within starts radiating outward. This is what makes you untouchable, not in the sense that you're immune to pain, but in the sense that pain no longer controls your path. You walk through the same world, but you experience it from a higher level. You're no longer reacting from wounds, you're responding from wisdom. And with that shift, everything changes. Because when triggers fade away, you don't just find peace, you find freedom. And freedom is where your untouchable self truly begins. There's a quiet transformation that takes place when you grow spiritually. At first, you may not even notice it. It happens subtly. You start to enjoy your own company more. Silence no longer feels empty. Space no longer feels like something to be filled. You stop seeking distractions. You stop craving noise. And suddenly, solitude, which once felt like loneliness, begins to feel like peace. That shift is profound. It means you're starting to return to yourself. And it's one of the clearest signs that you are becoming untouchable. Many people are afraid of being alone, not because solitude is painful in itself, but because of what surfaces when the noise fades. In solitude, you're left with your thoughts, your wounds, your truths. And for those who haven't made peace with their inner world, solitude feels like a threat. But once you begin healing, once you face those inner storms and make peace with your past, solitude becomes a sanctuary. It becomes the place you go to remember your power, not the place you avoid to escape your pain. The more you evolve, the less you need from the outside world to feel whole. You stop depending on constant validation, attention, or entertainment. You don't feel the need to fill every hour with people or plans. You become content just sitting in stillness, walking alone, watching the world move without needing to keep up. You start to appreciate the simplicity of your own presence. That kind of inner fulfillment can't be faked, and it can't be taken from you. When solitude becomes peace, your energy shifts. You become less reactive, less needy. You stop chasing things that drain you. You stop forcing connections that don't flow naturally. You don't entertain what feels heavy just to avoid being alone. You'd rather sit with yourself in silence than be surrounded by noise that feels disconnected. And in doing so, you build a kind of emotional self-sufficiency that makes you deeply powerful. You realize you don't need to be constantly surrounded to feel valuable. You stop measuring your worth by how many people check in, how many messages you receive, or how busy your calendar is. You understand that your presence is a gift, not something to be scattered endlessly, but something to be shared with intention. And you begin to offer that same presence to yourself. You give yourself the attention, the space, and the care you once expected from others. As solitude becomes peace, your mind becomes clearer. You start hearing your own intuition more distinctly. Ideas surface, insights come. You notice the subtle guidance of your inner voice, which was once drowned out by the constant input of the world. Solitude becomes the space where clarity is born, where healing deepens, where you recalibrate, recharge, and realign with your truth. And with this shift, you start choosing your company more carefully. You're no longer drawn to people just to avoid being alone. You're drawn to people who add to your peace, not those who subtract from it. You no longer settle for surface-level interactions. You crave depth, honesty, and presence. If those things aren't present, you'd rather be alone. And that is the kind of standard that makes you untouchable. Not cold, not distant, just deeply aligned with what your spirit needs. This doesn't mean you isolate yourself. It doesn't mean you stop loving or connecting. In fact, your connections become richer because you're not entering them from lack, you're entering them from wholeness. You don't need people to fill your voids. You invite them to share your fullness. That shift transforms your relationships. They become less about dependency and more about resonance. When you enjoy solitude, you no longer panic when people leave. You no longer chase after things that don't reciprocate. You no longer feel abandoned when plans fall through. Because you're never really alone. You're with yourself. And that becomes enough. More than enough. That's peace. So if you're in a season of solitude right now, and you're starting to notice that it doesn't scare you anymore, that it actually feels calming, that it gives you space to think and breathe and just be, you're evolving. You're detaching from the need to constantly be plugged into the world. And in doing so, you're plugging back into yourself. This is what spiritual maturity looks like. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's subtle, steady, and quiet. It's you sitting in silence, smiling to yourself, knowing that nothing is missing, because in that moment, you are whole. When solitude feels like peace, not loneliness, you stop chasing, you stop clinging, you stop needing. And that's when you realize you've become untouchable. There's a deep shift that happens when you begin to reconnect with your true self. The need for approval starts to dissolve. The craving to be seen, liked, praised, or applauded begins to fade. It's not that you stop caring completely. It's that your worth is no longer dependent on what the world says about you. You no longer live for the applause. You live from alignment. And that is one of the most powerful markers of spiritual growth. You no longer seek external validation to feel good about who you are. In the earlier stages of life, most of us are conditioned to seek approval. We're taught to be good students, obedient children, likable friends, and desirable partners. We learn how to mold ourselves into what others want us to be, all to gain acceptance. We wear masks, we perform, we become what's expected. And at first it works. People like us, compliment us, include us. But beneath the surface, something feels off, because every compliment is tied to a performance. And every moment of acceptance feels fragile, like it could vanish the second we stop pleasing others. This leads to a life where your mood rises and falls based on someone else's response to you. You feel good when they approve, you question yourself when they don't. It becomes a roller coaster of self-worth, constantly rising and crashing depending on external reactions. You end up living for likes, praise, agreement, and attention. Things that feel good in the moment, but leave you hollow when they're gone. Eventually, this way of living becomes exhausting. You begin to wonder, who am I when no one's watching? What do I value when no one's clapping? That's where the change begins. Slowly, you start turning inward. You begin listening to your own voice more than the noise outside. You realize that chasing approval is endless, because no matter how much you do, someone will always have a different opinion. No matter how good you are, it will never be enough for everyone. And in that realization, you free yourself. You stop bending to fit every room. You stop dimming your light to make others comfortable. You stop needing permission to be who you are. You begin to make decisions not for validation, but for alignment. You choose what feels right in your soul, even if no one claps for it. You follow your intuition, even if others doubt you. You speak your truth, even when it shakes, because your compass is no longer public opinion, it's inner knowing. And from that place, you start building a life that's yours. Not a life curated for others to admire, but one that actually feels good to live. When you no longer seek external validation, your relationships change too. You're no longer performing to be liked. You're no longer editing yourself to avoid rejection. You're showing up as you are. And while this might make some people uncomfortable, it also attracts the ones who are meant to truly connect with you. Real connection can only happen when you're authentic. The rest is just approval masquerading as acceptance. This shift also brings emotional stability. You stop being pulled in every direction by the opinions of others. Someone's praise doesn't inflate your ego, and someone's criticism doesn't destroy your peace. You take feedback with discernment, not desperation. You learn from what's useful and you let go of what's not. You no longer give strangers on the internet or even familiar faces authority over how you feel about yourself. Authority now lives within you. And with this internal anchor, you gain clarity. You're able to say no without guilt. You're able to walk away from situations that dishonor you, even if they come with approval attached. You don't compromise your truth for temporary applause. You know that approval based on performance is fleeting, but inner alignment is lasting. And that's what you begin to value most. This doesn't mean you become arrogant or closed off to others. It means you become self-sourced. You can appreciate compliments without needing them. You can accept criticism without being shaken by it. You don't need the world to reflect your worth back to you because you've already found it within. That's what makes you untouchable. Not because nothing affects you, but because no one defines you. You're not shaped by opinions, applause, or rejection. You're shaped by truth. Your truth. And in a world that constantly asks you to be someone else, choosing to be yourself fully is one of the most radical, liberating acts you can ever commit to. When you no longer seek external validation, you don't just gain confidence. You gain freedom. You gain peace. And that's when you realize you've already become who you were always meant to be. Becoming untouchable isn't about becoming hard. It's about becoming whole. It's not about winning battles. It's about no longer needing to fight them. If these signs resonate with you, congratulations. You're not just changing. You're rising.